I'm thinking about making a square painting from a slightly rectangular drawing, which doesn't always work. It's the one on the left there. If you're bold at the start, it keeps you from being tentative. If you're tentative at the start, you're only going to get worse. The longer you go, the tighter you'll become.
We'll go with that, which has just presented itself to me. So we'll start with that. That's good enough. I think there's anything else.
The working with materials is a really enjoyable process, and that's what I like about this collagraph process. Is you can just, when you're working with a piece, you're working on a non-verbal plane, and so it's quite hard to actually say exactly what you are feeling, because it's all to do with instinct. And you know, because the intellect, you're working with the intellect, but you're also working on a very kind of tactile, physical level, which is quite hard to explain.
I wouldn't think, oh, today I'm going to make something expressionistic, or today I'm going to make something less expressionistic. I would just make whatever I make.
I might get a knife. Here we are, we're going back to the technical side again, but this is the sort of thing I like, because I never quite know if it's going to work or not. Half the fun of anything is not knowing. There's nothing worse than producing something which is totally expected, because you always want surprises. So you're working from your gut. I think that's what I was talking about with these. So you're working from the gut because you're working in the dark almost. So you're working by feel, which is what I rather like about it, because you really don't know what's going to come out.
Now, late in the afternoon, if I really want to get physical on a painting that's starting to get boring, but you put this on and then paint. So you could get physical if you want to do that sort of thing. Do that sort of thing. What was the emotion, you know? And so sometimes they're frenetic, they're physical, they're lots of mark making, you know. But sometimes they're quite calm. That's quite a calm thing, you know. I always say have more than one mood, you know. I don't want them all to be just a style. I don't like the word style. Style becomes an end in itself. And that's not the end of making a painting. Color's the most powerful tool you have. It's the most emotional. You know, if we took the yellow out of this and put another color in, we'd have a different emotional response to it.
But initially there was always this starting point, which I did. I wanted it to be really dark and atmospheric and dramatic, to create a sense of very, very strong mood and melancholy. I think that's probably what I was after in my early work.
I don't think I don't rate the colours like that. I think, oh, yellow's not my colour, or it's too dangerous. So I think I just use them all, and they're all serve their own purpose. That's quite good. So now I'm thinking, so I might offer that. So what's that yellow going to do against the blue? It's going to make the blue stronger, I think. I hope. It's going to go quite well against that. Let's go with that. And as a colour, I feel that that's getting to be one of those colours you can't quite focus on, because it's not an orange like orange out the tube, where it is.
Usually the thing I realize is going to have the most impact, because most people are going to notice it. So I say, yeah, this is going to be yellow, but I'm not going to do the yellow until, you know, all right, I'm going to wake them up. So at the end, I'm going to put that in there, you know. And they're going to go, ah.
But the ones that probably I have in my mind are those kind of dark maroony reds, this sort of thing. Oh, I don't know. These I love. Gorgeous. It's the way that you get this bleeding. It's like it sounds weird to say, but it's like crying. This reminds me of that kind of thing where you've got this kind of bleeding from one mood to another.
I should add a third thing to it to make it. If I put white in it, that might work. That might make it a bit more complex. It's probably about the complexity of the colours more than anything. That problem of looking at them. But if I put white in it, that may just kill it. That's better than these ones.
Wow.
Hey, it's good.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's better than these because these, it seems more of a piece. It seems more like intentional. Whereas these are a bit, not sure, a little bit like half my mind was thinking about something else. Whereas surprisingly, given that you're in the space here, actually I found it I was quite focused on it, which I didn't think I would be able to be.
Wow.
The press is my family heirloom. I feel like there's a connection. If I talk about the things that I do in printing with my father, you know, I think he feels very proud that someone's still keeping the thing going, and we speak the same kind of language in that sense, although the kind of printing I do is nothing remotely like what they did.
And yeah, it was a happy childhood. I was very lucky with my parents, and that they were hugely supportive of anything we did, as long as you worked at it. You know, you had to work hard, and you couldn't make excuses. And as long as you did that, it was growing up in North America post-World War II. It was a very optimistic time and a very optimistic place. It wasn't like Britain with rationing and everything. You could do anything, particularly if you were a white male. You know, the world was made for you.
Yeah, they just didn't pressurise us. They were the opposite to some of my peers whose parents really pressurised them into certain careers like teaching or doctors or lawyers or whatever. But they never ever said anything like that to us. It was all, you must do what you want.
I was encouraged to do law. I did a law degree. My family didn't encourage me to do painting or printmaking or art in any way, really. Well, not in any sort of career type way. I spent a day with a barrister who was a family friend and found it all very quite glamorous, really. And it appealed, the kind of theatrical element of it appealed to me.
I think we do young people a disservice in society by telling them that work is something you have to do. And if you really do it well, then you can enjoy your leisure. And I go, no, 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 no. You got to teach them that work is what it's all about. It's not always fun, but it's very important, and it's you. But I was aware of privilege from day one. You know, I was born at the tail end of World War II, white male in North America. I was dealt a full hand, you know, that is a full hand. And if you can't make do with that, then the heck with you.
Grandfather was a mill owner in Lancashire. He's been very wealthy, landed, capitalist, industrialists, you know, captains of industry during the Industrial Revolution. So my grandmother would tell stories about, you know, it wasn't quite Downton Abbey, but it was, you know, she would tell stories of being chauffeur driven in the Daimler into Manchester.
I must have been 11 or 12, and my recollection of the whole affair is that I just found myself at boarding school. I think it had a very profound effect on me, being sent away from home like that. And I think I've been told since that actually I probably was asking why, what had I done wrong? When in fact I'd done nothing wrong, it was just everybody thought it was the natural progression of your education, and that's what you did. There were very strong parameters to what we could think and how we could behave as we were growing up, and it wasn't only to do with being at boarding school, it was to do with family life.
My father was a very interesting man, and he worked extremely hard. He worked 7 days a week. 2 jobs. He was an accountant, and he went to one company and worked till 5 or 6 o'clock, and then drove across town and worked for a tax accountant until 11 o'clock at night. And this was basically 7 days a week, with one exception, is Sunday mornings, and that's when we saw him on Sunday mornings and had, you know, how was your week and how did it go? Yeah.
I spent a year in Sudan with a kind of voluntary service overseas for juniors kind of thing, I think called Project Trust. And that had a really profound effect on my life, awakening me to the world beyond my family, beyond my upbringing, awakening me to what other people are out there in the world. I studied law for quite a while and then really wanted to be an artist. So when I started my art degree, that was the motivation for my work, kind of social consciousness. And I made images that were, I immediately started doing printmaking. Printmaking was my main focus. I went on a thing called the Forum, the Landmark Forum. And they get you to do things like halfway through you have to ring up your family and tell them that you love them. You know, which for me was like pulling teeth. I mean, awful to have to do that. I did it. And my family went, oh God, as joy in the moon is. But the act of doing that somehow enabled me to kind of separate from my family, kind of gain a kind of independence of mind. And it had a big influence on me. But for my artwork, I then went back to college and completely changed. And I'd realised that actually I'd been making these figurative pieces of work that no one really got. You know, they were kind of derivative of political issues, but they didn't communicate in the way that I wanted to communicate. And so I started making abstract work entirely differently, and I felt like, this really says what I want to say?
Well, when I was working on those larger pieces, for a long time after I left college, I thought my work was a little bit too esoteric to be commercial, because I was working in black and white, and it was very sombre and moody. And so I always thought, to keep my head above water, that it was the teaching that would keep me going. And so the work was, I didn't really think about the audience at all. I just thought about what I wanted to get over.
If it starts off, for me, if it started off the other way around with just a visceral response, it would be so personally expressive that I wouldn't think it'd have any value to anyone else. How are they going to make a connection? Because I always say to myself, why would anybody else be interested in what I think or feel or what my emotions were? I have those, and I'm quite comfortable with them, and I enjoy them, but I can't expect anyone else to, buy into that.
When I look at the pictures all around, Mum's has always bought my pictures. She's like my patron. They're always the light ones. Very rarely did she ever. Neither of them took to the very dark stuff, because they didn't. Dad always used to love things to do with quite pretty countryside and still lives and all that sort of stuff. So the very dark work that I did, they wouldn't ever, unless I gave it to them, they wouldn't want it on the wall. Like a lot of people, they wouldn't. I don't think they would, whether they didn't understand it was perhaps the reason they didn't want it, or whether they didn't want to understand it.
So when I make a painting, I'm very aware that I'm making, hopefully, a catalyst for someone else's pleasure, emotion. It may not be pleasure. Maybe I want them to feel claustrophobic in the woods. That's fine too, but feel something. I want people to look at my paintings and say, the chap who painted that really felt something, as I said the other day, I make paintings to send them out in the world, not for me to prop up and look at. Because frankly, after I finished it and I send it off to a gallery and somebody buys it, I never see them again. And, I don't care. People say, do you ever regret it? There's only one or two I regret, and only because I forgot to photograph them. Well, it's like children, isn't it? You send them out in the world.
Is that right for you?
Yeah, you send them out in the world.
There's an awful lot of my work that I do now where actually everything is to do with looking into, I don't know how to put it, it's all to do with looking right into the distance. I think the work recently has opened up more, and I think there is a little bit more feeling of lightness about it. We are ribs in the mind. How did you stay stranded? I rocked you. I could not spill your strength. I am fighting, only a dim slam more. I am the fresh, stayed hand, spleen from the rock, stink from the bone. I quite like that. I don't know what it means, but it's got a very, does have quite a dark, sinister feel to it, doesn't it?
A few weeks ago, and it was one of those things. I was, you're by yourself and you're staring at a river for a long time, which I do a lot of, and all of a sudden it comes over you about everything being interconnected. The trick is, and I'm struggling with this, but I probably always will, the trick is how to turn that into a visual record. You're painting an experience. Yeah. You're not painting an object anymore. So it's not a river, it's not a tree, yeah. It's not sunshine on the water, yeah. All those things that people like. Yeah. It's a total experience, which is hard enough to put in words, but to try to put it in just a visual medium is the challenge. It's one of my favorite poems that I keep in the studio, yeah. But it's called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water. I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Wendell Berry. It's good stuff, isn't it? Yeah, that kind of sums it up.
You know, if you had to say, someone said to me, "What's your work about?" Or, "What's your work about?" You know, I would say, "Oh, well, it's informed by the work that I do with mental health or whatever it is."
True.
And sometimes, you know, I might contrive to say, "Well, this is kind of an illustration." Like all these ones here that I made with the circular motif.
Yeah.
I said they were related to my work that I did with dementia, but they weren't really. But I tried to suggest that they were illustrative of the experience of somebody with dementia, but that isn't actually true. But there's something deeper goes on in that all of that work that I did with those people does somehow feed into my work.
No, I think the thing about Dartmoor is it's very much part of my history, having grown up here. When I do my poetry writing, people are always saying it's all about longing. I think it is with a lot of people, to be honest. I think there's this thing about longing. What for, who knows? But it's just this thing of wanting to, I don't know whether it's this false search for happiness. I've got no idea. You know.
Is it coming back to something? Is it?
Yes, it's a sort of wanting to come home, but then not quite knowing what that home is really. As long as I can work, I can deal with it.
Artists don't retire. They don't retire. Musicians don't retire. You know, the art world doesn't retire. It's an obsession. You can't. It's just life's over if you retire. What's that Dylan song? 20 years of schooling and they put you on the day shift. I used to think 40 years of work and they put you on a golf course. You know. No, that's death. No, I'm not going there. You know. Now I've offended all the golfers in the world, but no. That doesn't mean you can't change. You know, you change. I was a bogus engineer for 38 years, and I don't do that anymore. But I certainly work 7 days a week. You know, I don't want to work less than 7 days a week, because that's life.